We're told that you'll never forget where you were when you first heard the news. And I've got to say, for some of you, you're going to remember where you were when I flew past you sprinting. I'm just joking. So let's talk about Rizz's September 11th, not only the foundation, but also the race that he put on. Absolutely fantastic event. And Rizz is excellent at putting on these events for different causes, different reasons, on different holidays, to really get the community of ladder racing together, engaged, and as you'll see last night, performing. Because my God, did we go at an incredible speed in the New York map. And so just to rewind a bit, as you see over here, pointing to the wrong side of my chest. As you can see, I was in the U.S. Marines, served my country for 6 years. Now, I got in just before September 11th. I graduated school in June 2001, went into boot camp August 16th, 2001, and by September, I was on my first PX run. Now, what does that mean? It means in the military, we have a store called PX, and while you're in boot camp, you'll visit that store multiple times. Now, boot camp for Marines is 3 months long. I know other services have different length, training, boot camp, whatever they call it. But for us, it's 3 months long. And so throughout those 3 months, we visit the PX multiple times. Now, in my case, we were there, and we hear the ladies chattering, the ladies that work the register and the counters and, help us out and all that. And so we hear them chattering. We get our stuff. We get back to our barracks. Our drill instructors walk in and say, hey, rest of the day is canceled. We'll do some stuff, do some PT. But if you have family in New York, this is what you need to know. And that one day changed the course of all of our lives. Whether you were directly affected by it or not. Whether you were in the military or not. And so, in honor of that, Rizz put on this event. And it, like I said initially, it was fantastic. Truly a great race, great experience. And if you know anything about environments of elite performing or high performing individuals, whether it's police, firefighters, military, any of the first responders, be it military or not, when you get the top performers together, there's always going to be banter. There's always going to be, people having fun, people, ribbing each other, so to speak, jabbing at each other to get the energy and the ego up. Because that's what makes it fun. That's what makes these environments unique and makes them attractive to people who excel in those environments. Now, coming out of high school, that was not me. I did team sports, very, very, short periods of time. Wrestled, ran cross country because I had to, because I wrestled. And so team sports was not my thing. Not something that I actively seeked. But I went into the military. Got no choice. You got to build relationships. You got to participate, whether it's during times of peace or during times of war. And so I quickly learned how to develop myself in these environments. Get to know people, build relationships, have fun, learn when and where I can cross the line, because I definitely like to push boundaries, push buttons. And so being on that race yesterday, so we were all in Discord, a lot of us at least are on Discord. Now I will send you over to Rizz's channel because he's got the audio for that. A couple other guys have the audio for that. So I'm not going to, I'm not going to comment on that, but I highly encourage you, go check it out because it is hilarious. Having so many guys, so many high-level performing guys in one group, in one call, absolute just mayhem. And so that's where this event truly began, is on that call. And so as we get into the map, now the way this event was set up is there's different pens, and each pen went out at a different time. And so in our pen, we were, not quite the strongest guys. We weren't the, 650 to 1,000 group. But I think ours went from like 530 to 650, somewhere around there. And so decent performing group. And by decent, I mean, there's a dichotomy of strength in our group. A lot of great climbers, a lot of great sprinters, a lot of people that, are in between, where they're the strong diesels and they can pull the entire time. Like there was a couple guys off the front. Oh, the sun. I didn't even notice that. All right, so let me do this. All right, so as you can see, we are on the Gotham Grind course, and I am in the 520 to 650 pen. And with 20-ish seconds to go, it is already exciting. You can see the chat going off crazy. A lot of good riders in here. A lot of people calling for it to be a zone 2 ride, to just kind of chill, have fun. But again, when you put a lot of high performing racers, especially racers with ego, we'll call it what it is. We're all, we all know where we stand, and we all try and push the boundaries of pushing each other around and making each other work. And so we head out the pen, and as you can see, I'm already hitting 500 watts just to stay with this group. And as you saw in the chat, someone posted up, "See you later, losers," because they're off the front and just gone. Like they're pushing hard. And so it being, this being a group of ladder racers and, everywhere in between, but mostly ladder racers, a lot of us are used to that, punchy attacking off the front, just kind of pushing hard. See Rizz there to my left, just passed by him. Now, I am in my U.S. military endurance sports kit because obviously it is to celebrate, in my case, celebrate my time in the military, or honor my time in the military, not necessarily celebrate, but honor my time in the military. And so that was the kit that I decided to use, even though I don't write for them officially. And so as we are cruising through New York, besides the one person that just kind of blasted off the front, we are, for the most part, just going. Like we're moving fast. As you can see, we're 40 plus kilometers an hour. At this point, hit this short climb, which is where where the bulk load of the, I don't say the bulk load of the resistance, because we only go through this, I think, twice. This sprint, but there is quite a bit of uphill on this, on this route. And so if you look at the map on the top right, you'll see that, towards the middle of the route we have, a little bit of a climb, and then towards the end again we climb back up. And so the second half definitely has more elevation than the first half. The first half is pretty flat. And so as we go through this, the group starts to kind of, push a little bit. I end up, falling a little bit behind, but I push up in order to stay with the group. Now, I'm on the SL8 with the NV45 Pros. I decided to go with the 45 Pros. Initially, I was thinking maybe I should do disc. This would be a good stage for disc wheels because the elevation's not that heavy. But it's the wheels that I decided to go with. I thought I could do well, and as you guys will see in the end, it worked out for me in the long run. These days my priority is I'm over here waving high at people because I saw Yohi in there, and obviously Yohi, he raced yesterday, and so, or day before this event, and so I was excited to see the OTR Swagger guys in there, knowing that they pushed really hard on their race, and so seeing them in this, they definitely deserve the opportunity to just sit in the peloton and coast while others did the work. And so from this point on, it's basically us just cruising. So I'm going to kind of fast forward through some of this. Now you can see there are a couple riders pushing off the front. And you see the Tron bike off way in the distance. That's the person who kind of just went off and decided that he was going to do this on his own. And you see a couple riders kind of pulling and trying to close that gap. And so I pushed myself onto the front just to kind of stay with them. I didn't want to miss any potential gaps, especially if there was going to be, there was going to end up being a split between the groups. Again, this being the, 520, 530 to 650 group. There's going to be a dynamic set of people. Some people are going to be stronger on the higher end. Some people are going to be, stronger on the lower end. So there is a potential where the group could split in half, or split in a way where a couple of riders get dropped off the back. Now, unfortunately, I forgot to turn on sauce, and so we'll never know. We'll never know whether or not a split happened. At least, people were dropping off the back. I think people did talk about it, but as you can see, we are ultra stretched out right now. And so anytime we hit these, especially the slight inclines, I wanted to make sure that I stayed within the group. I wanted to make sure that I stayed close enough attached so I could stay in the draft, stay within the group. At times, I ended up pushing myself back into the center of the group because, as you can see there, because the new Zwift pack dynamics pushed me out into... all right, and so as we head to this, start heading through this climb now, that first part of it, not bad, 2-3%, no big deal. As you can see, some people are launching their feathers as we hit the darker red, and I felt like this for me was where I needed to focus most of my effort. As you can see on my power graph, there's a lot of red, like a lot of red, because it's a lot of me pushing to keep up with the group or catch up to the group, especially on the descent. I've learned with the SL8 and the NB45 Pros, I don't descend as well as others might, even though I'm a little bit on the full disc side of a rider. And so, I was doing my best just to stay on the back of this group, pushing as hard as I can, even getting, into 500-600 watts just to get over, over the hump. Now, I do want to insert a quick comment here. Every time we come up and approach that hill, I always get nervous thinking that we're going to have to climb that hill because Zwift, for whatever reason, the Zwift head does not know how to follow the route that we're riding. It'll always just, I guess there's a main route and then there's like a deviation, and so it always follows the main route, and then once you deviate is when it updates what it shows in the hood. So as you'll see, someone puts in the chat that it feels like we've been riding 20 miles so far. And as you can see by my average power being 268 watts, which is basically at my max. Like that's at my FTP in terms of my power. We were going that fast. We truly were just moving. And there was some talk in the Discord of how fast we would actually complete this stage. We're only 11 minutes in, and we're almost at the full lap marker. And so that just goes to show you how quickly we were moving. Now, when I looked at Polo Hill's race this morning, they completed it a lot faster than we did. So I can only imagine what their average pace was, but I will defer you to his video. So you can check that out. And so as we hit the climb leading into the sprint, launched my feather power up, and I just decided to keep on the power. I wasn't trying to
escape or, initiate an attack. Ultimately, I was just trying to get over the top, which is why I eased up really quickly, because the last thing I need is to trigger any of these guys into attacking, because that's where the rampage would truly start. Now you see the OTR guys starting to, looks like they're lining up, but you got Lloyd off the front, decides to use his power-up, which at that point Rizz was like, hey, by the way, there's no more power-ups for the rest of the stage. And so Lloyd went off the front and basically started pulling everyone. You see another rider, a little bit further up ahead before that Tron bike. And so as the group started pulling forward, I started drifting towards the back, and again, especially on this downhill, I needed to just really make sure that I dig in a bit, cross into that, mid 300 watt range, so that way I can stay with this group, but ultimately just kind of keep myself in a position where I didn't fly off the front, but also, didn't fall off the back, because this is one of those races where if I fell off the back more than a few meters, there was no way I was going to catch these guys. Absolutely no way. And so I needed to make sure that I stayed as close as possible with everyone here. And so again, as we hit this hill, knowing that this was going to be our last power-up for the stage, my thought was to save my power-up for the second set of climbs, because even though this has the steepest part of the stage with that ramp up that goes into like 9-10%, I knew that if I could just overpower it and stay with the group, then I could use my feather on that, essentially that last climb, which is a little bit longer in terms of the higher percentages. It's two orange sections that, even though it's separated by a little bit of yellow, it's two orange sections that basically is just long enough to make it painful. So I wanted to make sure I stayed with the group, but keep my power up for that last climb, knowing that basically the rest of the stage from that point on is downhill. There is a part where it inclines up ever so slightly, but it's not long enough to really make a difference. And so I dig in and, didn't quite cross the, 600 watt threshold, but staying in that, 6 watts per kilogram range just to get myself over the top. And as you can see, the group is supremely stretched out. And so I wanted to make sure I, dug in a little bit more, wanted to make sure that I didn't get myself dropped, as, we really became almost single file in this, as you can see there. Now, as we get to the bottom of this decline, you see there's some riders starting to approach from behind me, and as they basically kind of came through like a wave, I decided to ride that wave and give another dig and push up as quickly as possible, so that way I can stay with this group. Because even though the group is starting to come back together, you see a big blob of us there starting to form, there's still a bunch of riders off the front. Now, we were catching some of the riders from the earlier pen, so the group now kind of intermixed, where we have some people that are in our pen, other people that are not in our pen, which really made it confusing as we hit this part, because it really made it seem like we were in a good spot, but maybe not a good spot. And so I looked at the chart, saw that I was in 20-something place, and decided that, I need a push to catch that front group. There was a little bit of a split. You can see Brent there in the front of this main group pushing, getting us up to, up through that split. And so I just wanted to make sure I pushed myself through. I did see that gap kind of holding, and so I pushed a little bit harder, especially as we hit this downhill, pushed a little bit harder in order to catch that front group, because again, I did not want to get left out of the potential to, contest the sprint finish. And so I, gave a little bit of a dig. That pulled the rest of the group up behind me, and as they came up behind me, ended up going around me with enough momentum, and we were able to latch it back on. Now, like I mentioned earlier, this being the last big climb of the stage. I knew I wanted to save my feather for this part. And so as we, all kind of string out a little bit, I'm basically just waiting in anticipation, finger over the trigger, so that way I can launch my power up as we hit this 4% section. Because I knew if I launched it at the 4% section, it would bridge me between both orange sections. It actually ended up lasting a little bit longer than I thought, which was exciting to me because it basically took me all the way up this climb. And as you can see, that gave me the ability to basically just crawl through this route and make my way up to the front, getting in that top 10 range, and ultimately, bridging, being able to bridge in a way where if I didn't have that power up, I don't think I would have been able to do it. Or I would have had to put a lot more effort in order to bridge that gap. And so now there wasn't any real splits that ended up happening, but the pace definitely started picking up. You can see the front there is starting to thin out a little bit. It almost seems like teams are starting to form sprint trains, but in reality it's just people pushing a little bit harder. Generally the last kilometer or so of any race this starts to happen, or the last 2 kilometers of any race this starts to happen. People start pushing a little bit harder, so I gave a bit of a dig, got into the 300 watt range just to make sure that, again, I'm staying with this group. I wanted to be sure that, with 900 meters, 800 meters left, that I was not going to get left behind on the opportunity sprint against some of these guys. Because again, this is where, I feel like if we all launched our sprints at once, I honestly think we would crash the Zwift server, because you would see power spikes, immense power spikes. And so I start rolling through a little bit to the front, and I was like, you know what, I have no issues with launching my sprint off the front, so I never worry about ending up on the front. You see the rider to the left starts to dig in a little bit. We've got 400 meters to go, a couple more people start to go, so I ramp up my gears and launch. Now I'm probably in one of the best positions where I launch my sprint, because it is basically a train of people where I can keep pushing through. Now I'm not, I'm at full power for me at this moment. And so you see me and Yohi there at the very end, pushing as hard as we can. And so I end up crossing the line, ultimately crossing the line in 4th place. Now, the rider that came across in 5th place, I was kind of surprised. I didn't think I passed him. And so maybe that's an issue where, with Zwift, and maybe even the same thing with Yohi. Maybe all 3 of us, if we had a photo finish, you would see that all 3 of us crossed, at the same time, or maybe I was behind them, but Zwift basically reorganized it in a way where I crossed in 4th place. So that was, for me, that was exciting, because against some of these guys, that was the best possible scenario that I could have, because there's some strong sprinters, strong racers in this event. So hope you guys enjoyed that. Now for the wrap up.
All right, guys, as you can see, the sun is coming out, which means it is my time to get wrapped up. And so I hope you enjoyed that race. Thank you guys for those of you who not only participated in the race, made it an incredible time, no matter what pen you were in, but also if you donated to Rizz's cause. I know he hit his 100% as of this morning, and so he will be doing the PRL full. I will probably at some point join him on that. I'm not going to do the full thing, at least not that I suspect, but we'll see. Maybe I'll put a comment in the in the video after the fact to see if it ends up happening. And so hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you guys for coming out, and I will catch you guys on the next race.